financing a nose job in 18 monthly payments, the same way you would finance a used car, skipping the supermarket run so you never miss a standing appointment at the salon, booking a tummy tuck at a public hospital for almost nothing on a waiting list that also holds people needing surgery to survive. In Brazil, none of this is unusual. It is just a normal week. This is a country where a manicurist in a working-class suburb might struggle to name her city councilman, but she can tell you exactly which surgeon reshaped which telenovela star, how much it cost, and whether it was worth every real. Brazil is the third largest beauty market on the entire planet. It performs more cosmetic surgery than almost any nation on Earth. It has taken the simple act of looking good and turned it into something close to a national faith. And yet, when you look at what Brazil actually spends to educate a single child, the number lands at barely a third of what wealthy countries spend per student. So here is the puzzle. How does a nation become genuinely world-class at making people beautiful while staying stubbornly, painfully average at teaching them to read? People love to repeat that Brazil spends more on beauty than on education. The real story is stranger than that slogan. And once you understand it, you understand something deep about how survival actually works in this country. If you are the kind of person who is fascinated by how money, culture, and everyday survival collide in different corners of the world, subscribe to the channel right now. We break down the real economics of life around the globe, the stuff that never makes it into the tourist brochures. Hit that button and let us get into Brazil. Let us start with the claim itself, because it is everywhere and it is only half true. Take it literally, at the level of the national budget, and it falls apart almost immediately. Brazil pours a bigger slice of its economy into education than most rich nations do. Depending on how you count, the government spends somewhere between 4 and 6% of everything the country produces on schools and universities. That is actually above the average for the wealthy club of nations known as the OECD. On paper, Brazil looks committed to education, so the crude version of the headline is wrong. The country does not, in raw budget terms, hand more money to lipstick than to literacy. But here is where it gets interesting, because the slogan survives for a reason. It survives because it points at something real, even if it gets the details wrong. And that something real is about priorities, not just totals. When you divide Brazil's education budget by the sheer number of students, the money evaporates. The government spends roughly $3,700 per student per year across the whole system. In the average rich country, that figure is closer to 11 or 12,000. Brazilian classrooms routinely pack in more than 20 children per teacher, while wealthy nations sit closer to 14. Teacher salaries are low. A quarter of university students drop out in their first year. The commitment is there in the percentages, but the lived experience of a Brazilian public school is chronic scarcity. Now, hold that image in your head: the crowded classroom, the underpaid teacher, the peeling paint, and walk 2 blocks down the street into the salon, because that is where the money, the energy, and the ambition seem to flow effortlessly. To understand how beauty became this powerful, you have to go back further than most people expect. This did not start with Instagram. It did not even start with television. The roots run down into the country's founding, into a mixed, tropical, deeply unequal society that learned very early to read status off the surface of the body. Brazil was built on colonization and on slavery that lasted longer here than almost anywhere else in the Americas. Brazil did not abolish slavery until 1888, making it the last country in the Western world to do so. That history left behind a society organized around rigid, visible hierarchies of class and color. In a world like that, appearance was never just vanity, it was information. The way you dressed, the way you carried yourself, the texture of your hair, the shade of your skin, all of it got read instantly as a signal of where you belonged and how far you might be allowed to climb. Beauty was a passport. And people learned, generation after generation, that the passport was worth almost any investment. There is also the simple, physical fact of the country itself. Brazil is hot, coastal, and lived largely outdoors. The beach is not a vacation. It is a public square, a place where the whole social spectrum gathers, with most of the body on display. Add Carnival, a national celebration that puts the human form at the very center of the culture, and you get a society where the body is rarely hidden and constantly seen. When bodies are always on view, bodies become something you tend to decorate and compete with. The climate and the culture conspired to make appearance impossible to ignore. By the middle of the 20th century, that instinct met mass media, and the whole thing caught fire. The runs of Brazilian television, dominated by a single giant network, put a very specific kind of face on every screen in the country every single night. Telenovelas, the sweeping evening dramas that the whole nation watches together, became beauty instruction manuals disguised as entertainment. The heroine's haircut on Monday was in every salon by Friday. The country was being trained, collectively, on what to want. Then came the supermodels. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Brazil started exporting beauty to the world. Gisele Bündchen became one of the highest-paid models on the planet. Adriana Lima, Alessandra Ambrosio, a whole generation of Brazilian faces, defined global fashion for 2 decades. For a country often talked about only for its problems, this was a source of enormous pride. Brazil was not just consuming the world's beauty standard, it was setting it. And that pride fed straight back into the culture at home. If the world wanted to look Brazilian, then looking good was not a distraction from national identity. It was national identity. So, by the time the internet arrived, the soil was already perfectly prepared. Social media did not create Brazil's obsession with appearance. It simply poured gasoline on a fire that had been burning for 400 years. Let us talk numbers, because they are genuinely staggering. That beauty and personal care market I mentioned, the 3rd largest on Earth, is worth around $30 billion a year. Brazil sits behind only the United States and China, 2 countries with vastly larger populations and richer consumers. Per person, Brazilians punch far above their economic weight when it comes to shampoo, perfume, skincare, cosmetics, and salon visits. And this is not a rich person's habit that the poor watch from outside. It cuts across every class. Brazil is one of the top consumers of deodorant and fragrance in the world. Perfume is not a luxury here. It is a daily necessity, worn by street vendors and executives alike. The country has homegrown beauty giants, companies like Natura and O Boticario, that have grown into serious international players by selling to their own beauty to hungry population first. To feel how remarkable this is, you have to hold it against the reality of Brazilian wages. The national minimum wage sits at only a few $100s a month. Tens of millions of families live close to that line, budgeting carefully for rent, food, and transport. And yet, inside those same tight budgets, there is almost always room found for beauty. The trick is that beauty in Brazil has been engineered to be affordable in a way it simply is not in wealthier countries. A neighborhood salon manicure can cost the equivalent of a couple of dollars. A haircut is cheap. Cosmetics come in small, low-price sizes designed for people who cannot buy in bulk. The entire market has been shaped, from top to bottom, to make sure that looking good never becomes a rich person's monopoly. That is the quiet engine underneath the headline numbers. But the statistic that really stops people cold is the surgery. Brazil performs more than 2 million cosmetic surgical procedures in a single year. It is consistently ranked either first or second in the world for the sheer number of surgical operations, trading the top spot with the United States, a country with 50 million more people. There are close to 7,000 registered plastic surgeons working in Brazil. Liposuction, breast augmentation, eyelid surgery, and the procedure, the world literally named after this country, the Brazilian butt lift, are woven into ordinary life in a way that outsiders find hard to believe. To understand how surgery became so normal, you have to meet one man. His name was Ivo Pitanguy, and he is arguably the most important figure in this entire story. Pitanguy was a Brazilian surgeon who, starting in the 1960s, did something radical. He argued that beauty was not a privilege reserved for the wealthy. He argued that the poor had a right to it too. He set up services that allowed plastic surgery to be performed in public and teaching hospitals where trainee surgeons could learn their craft, while ordinary Brazilians received procedures they could never have afforded privately. Think about what that did to the culture. In most of the world, cosmetic surgery is coded as elite, something for celebrities and the rich. Pitanguy helped reframe it in Brazil as something closer to a public good, a form of dignity that everyone deserved access to. He trained surgeons who fanned out across the globe. He turned his clinic in Rio into a pilgrimage site for the international jet set. And at home, he planted an idea that never went away. The idea that improving your body is not shameful indulgence. It is self-respect. That legacy is still visible today. Through the public system and through teaching hospitals, some Brazilians access reconstructive and even cosmetic procedures at little or no cost, often as part of surgical training. A working-class woman in Brazil can realistically dream of surgery in a way that a woman on the same income in many other countries simply cannot. The dream is not gate-kept by wealth alone, and that accessibility is exactly why the numbers climb so high. What makes Brazil truly unusual is that this demand is overwhelmingly homegrown. In countries like Turkey or Colombia, the surgery boom is driven heavily by foreign medical tourists chasing a bargain. Brazil is different. The vast majority of those millions of procedures are performed on Brazilians for Brazilians. This is not an export industry. It is a domestic appetite. And that tells you the hunger comes from inside the culture, not from outside money. It also comes with a darker footnote that honesty demands we mention. The Brazilian butt lift, the procedure the world named after this country, is one of the most dangerous cosmetic operations there is, with a complication and death rate far higher than most people assume. When a whole society treats surgery as routine, as normal as getting braces, the genuine medical risk can fade into the background. And that casual attitude towards something that is still major surgery is one of the real costs hiding behind the glamorous statistics. Now we arrive at the part that ties everything together, the part that explains why this is not shallow at all. Because in Brazil, appearance is not just about feeling good, it is money, it is opportunity, it is, quite literally, a job requirement. For decades, Brazilian job advertisements openly included a phrase that tells you everything. The phrase was boa aparência, which translates to good appearance. Employers wanted candidates with good appearance, and everyone understood the code. It was partly about grooming, and partly about class and race, a quiet way of filtering who got the front desk job, the sales role, the position facing customers. The phrase has become more controversial and legally fraught over the years, but the underlying reality did not vanish. In a competitive economy, with millions of people chasing every good position, looking the part is not vanity, it is strategy. Picture a young woman from a poor neighborhood on the edge of São Paulo. She is competing for a retail job, a receptionist role, a spot on a shop floor. She has no connections, no elite degree, no family money. What she can control is how she presents. A good haircut, well-kept nails, clear skin, the right clothes. In a stack of near-identical applicants, that presentation can be the difference between an income and no income. So when she spends on her appearance, she is not being frivolous. She is investing in the one asset she is allowed to build. This is the low-cost living reality that outsiders miss. In an economy that offers the poor very few ladders, beauty is one of the few rungs within reach. And this is where the education comparison stops being a gotcha and starts being genuinely tragic. Because for that same young woman, the education path is long, expensive, uncertain, and full of gatekeepers. University is competitive and often out of reach. The public schools that were supposed to lift her were underfunded and overcrowded. The payoff from a degree, if she can even get one, arrives years down the line, if at all. The payoff from looking good arrives next week. When you are surviving month to month, the human brain does not choose the abstract long-term bet over the concrete short-term one. It chooses what works now. Brazil's beauty obsession is, in part, a perfectly rational response to a country where the fast lane to opportunity runs through appearance and the slow lane through a broken school system. So, how does a population that is not rich actually pay for all of this? This is where Brazilian financial culture reveals its genius and its danger. The answer is installments. Brazilians buy almost everything in parcelas, monthly payments, often advertised as 12 times with no interest. You can buy a phone this way, a fridge this way, and yes, a surgery this way. Clinics openly advertise procedures broken into small monthly chunks that fit a modest salary. A breast augmentation that would be impossible to pay for in one lump becomes a manageable line in the monthly budget, sitting right next to the rent and the electricity bill. The same logic runs through the everyday beauty economy. Salons are everywhere, and they are cheap by global standards. A manicure, a blow-dry, a wax. These are woven into weekly routines across every income level. And beauty is not only something Brazilians buy, it is something millions of them sell. Companies like Natura and Avon built their empires here on a small army of independent sales representatives, mostly women, who move cosmetics door to door and through their own personal networks. At its peak, this direct sales force numbered well over 1 million people, one of the largest of its kind anywhere on Earth. For huge numbers of Brazilian women, especially in poorer areas, selling makeup and skincare is not a hobby. It is a primary or supplementary income, a piece of the informal economy that keeps a household afloat. Beauty is simultaneously the thing they spend on and the thing they earn from. And now there is a new frontier. The smartphone has turned beauty into a genuine escape route. A talented young woman in a favela, with good lighting and a steady following, can build a career as a beauty influencer, land brand deals, and out-earn people with university degrees. Doing hair, doing nails, doing makeup, filming it, and selling it has become one of the most visible paths from poverty towards something better. For a generation that grew up watching the formal economy fail their parents, that is not a shallow ambition. It is a lifeline they can actually see. Step back and look at the whole machine. A poor woman invests in her appearance because it improves her odds in the job market. She pays for it in tiny monthly installments that fit her budget. She might fund those installments by selling beauty products to her neighbors, and the images telling her which look to chase come from telenovelas and influencers who set a standard the whole country absorbs. It is a closed loop, and almost everyone is inside it. Picture an ordinary morning in that loop. A woman wakes in a small home on the edge of a big city. Money is tight, and the month is long. She gets the kids ready for a public school she knows is underfunded, and she feels that ache. But the school is not something she can fix today. On the way to work, she stops at the corner salon, where the woman doing her nails is a neighbor running her own tiny business out of a front room. The manicure costs less than lunch. At work, she is presentable, put together, competitive, because in her world, that is not optional. On her phone between tasks, she scrolls influencers who started exactly where she is and clawed their way up through beauty. In the evening, she sells a few lipsticks to a co-worker to help cover the installment on a procedure she is slowly paying off. Nothing in that day is frivolous. Every single choice is a rational move on a board where the beauty squares pay out and the education squares are jammed. Multiply that woman by 100 million and you have the country. That's not vanity at work. It's arithmetic, done by people with almost no better options. Now let us turn back to the other side of the ledger, the classroom, and be honest about what is happening there. The problem in Brazilian education has never really been the headline percentage of GDP. The problem is what that money has to stretch to cover and how unequally it lands. A well-funded private school in a rich neighborhood of São Paulo can rival the best schools anywhere in the world. A public school in the rural Northeast or in a favela operates in a completely different universe. Same country, same budget line, wildly different reality. The gap between regions makes it worse. The wealthy Southeast, home to São Paulo and Rio, sits in a different world from the poorer Northeast and the vast rural interior. A child's postal code can decide whether they get a functioning school with real resources or a crumbling building with a rotating cast of exhausted teachers. The national average hides these extremes. It smooths a country of dazzling private academies and abandoned public classrooms into a single tidy percentage that describes almost no one's actual experience. Teachers sit at the heart of the crisis. Brazilian teachers are, on average, poorly paid relative to other professions requiring similar education. When a career feels underpaid and undervalued, the most talented people drift elsewhere, and the profession struggles to attract and keep the best minds. Classrooms are crowded, infrastructure is patchy, and the dropout numbers tell the story of a system leaking students at every stage. Many teenagers leave school to work because immediate income beats a distant diploma when your family needs money this month. The very same logic that pushes a young woman toward the salon pushes a young man out of the classroom and onto a job site. The country is not failing to teach because its people hate learning. It is failing because, for millions, the math of survival never quite adds up in the classroom's favor. So the honest version of our headline is not that Brazil, the government, prefers mascara to math. It is that Brazil, the society, has built a world where investing in your appearance pays off quickly and reliably, while investing in your education pays off slowly, unequally, and sometimes not at all. The market for beauty is efficient, accessible, and financed to the teeth. The market for education is bureaucratic, unequal, and slow. People are not stupid. They follow the incentives, and the incentives, for millions, point straight at the mirror. This is the piece that outsiders almost always get wrong. They look at the surgery statistics and the salon on every corner, and they see a nation of the vain, obsessed with the surface of things. What they are actually looking at is a nation of the pragmatic. Behind nearly every beauty choice in Brazil sits a cold, clear calculation about scarcity, opportunity, and time. The mistake is reading as vanity what is really a survival strategy. Once you see it that way, the whole picture flips, and a story that sounded like a punchline turns into something much closer to a tragedy. There is a deeper emotional truth underneath all of this too, one that the spreadsheets miss. In a country marked by profound inequality, violence, and instability, control is rare and precious. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control whether the public school improves or the job market opens up. You cannot control crime or corruption or a currency that has crashed and rebuilt itself more than once in living memory. But you can control your own body. You can decide to lose the weight, fix the nose, get the surgery, and walk into the room looking exactly the way you want. Beauty, in this light, is not superficial at all. It is one of the few arenas where an ordinary Brazilian gets to feel like the author of their own life. Remember what Pitanguy actually argued all those decades ago. He did not frame beauty as luxury. He framed it as a right, a form of dignity. something a human being deserves regardless of what they earn. That idea sank deep into the national soul. In much of the world, spending on your looks carries a whiff of shame, a sense that you should be above such things. Brazil largely deleted that shame. Here, tending to your appearance is closer to an act of self-respect, a refusal to let poverty decide how you get to feel in your own skin. When you understand it that way, the beauty obsession stops looking like a symptom of shallowness and starts looking like a strange, stubborn form of hope. It also comes with real costs, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. The pressure is immense, and it falls hardest on women and on the young. The normalization of surgery means teenagers grow up viewing their bodies as projects to be corrected, rather than homes to be lived in. The financing culture means people take on debt for procedures, chasing an ideal that keeps moving. And there are genuine physical risks. Cosmetic surgery is still surgery, and a culture that treats it as casual can blur how serious it really is. The same accessibility that Pitangui championed as dignity can, at its worst, become a treadmill that never lets anyone feel finished. Where is all of this heading? If anything, the machine is accelerating. Social media has handed the telenovelas old power to millions of influencers, and Brazil is one of the most social media saturated nations on earth. Brazilians spend more hours scrolling than almost anyone, and every one of those hours delivers another wave of images defining what a body should look like. The beauty market keeps growing year after year, faster than the economy around it, and the market is widening. For a long time, this was framed as a women's story, but that is changing fast. A rising wave of Brazilian men is now moving into grooming, skincare, and surgery, chasing the same edge in the same competitive job market. Male vanity, once quietly mocked, is becoming just another normal expense. What used to be half the population's obsession is steadily becoming everyone's. The culture that took 400 years to build shows no sign of slowing down. If anything, the next generation is being outraised to take it even further, with filters and edited images setting a standard that no unaltered human body can actually meet. Meanwhile, the schools grind on, improving in some places, stagnating in others, always fighting for resources against 100 other national priorities. There are bright spots, real reforms, dedicated teachers doing extraordinary work with almost nothing. But the fundamental imbalance remains. In Brazil, the path through beauty is paved and lit and open 24 hours. The path through education is potholed, crowded, and uphill. And human beings, being human beings, take the road that is actually open to them. There is a national price for all of this, even if no one sends the bill directly. A country's long-term wealth is built on what its people know and can do, on engineers and doctors and teachers and builders. When the fastest reliable payoff for a poor teenager runs through appearance rather than skill, a nation quietly loses some of the talent it needed most. The salon cannot build the bridges or write the software or run the hospitals. So, the same instincts that make individual Brazilians so resourceful in the short term can, added up across a whole society, hold the country back in the long term. It is a collective trap made entirely of rational individual choices, and those are the hardest traps of all to escape. The frustrating part is that Brazil has proven it can move the needle when it decides to. Literacy has climbed steadily over the decades. More young people reach university now than their grandparents could have imagined. The talent and the hunger are obviously there. What has been missing is a system that rewards learning as quickly and as reliably as the beauty economy rewards a good haircut. Fix that balance, and the same relentless energy now pouring into appearance could pour into classrooms instead. So the next time you see that headline, "The country that spends more on beauty than education," remember that the literal version is false, and the deeper version is heartbreakingly true. It is not that Brazilians are vain. It is that they live in a system where appearance is one of the fastest, cheapest, of most reliable investments a poor person can make, and education is one of the slowest and most uncertain. The salon delivers. The school, too often, does not. Brazil did not choose beauty over books out of shallowness. It chose the ladder that was actually leaning against the wall. And that, in the end, is the real story. Not a country of empty vanity, but a country of relentless, resourceful, deeply human people, making rational bets inside a game that was rigged long before they were born. They are not spending on beauty because they do not value knowledge. They are spending on beauty because, for far too many of them, beauty is the only investment the country has ever reliably paid back. Change the payback, and you change the country. Until then, the mirror will keep winning. Not because Brazilians love it more than books, but because the mirror is the one thing that has never once let them down. If this breakdown gave you a new way of seeing a place you thought you understood, that is exactly what this channel exists to do. Subscribe if you have not already, and watch the video on your screen right now, where we unpack another country whose everyday economics will completely change the way you think. We will see you in the next one.